And I do not, sometimes I can figure out why I made a mistake. I cannot figure out how this happened. Down at the bottom of the page, but it's pretty, it's not a huge thing. Just, if you just keep doing what we've been doing, you'll be fine. It's just not what it says in here. This is today, our usual thing. Then it says, see next page for tonight's homework. And here's the correction. So if you will get out your purple sheet and just make this correction here. Again, if you just did, if you kind of look at this, and you know, here's the thing to know about correction. You kind of look at this and say, wait a minute, Miss Penny can't mean this. This isn't what we usually do. You know, this is the other side of reading directions. If the directions don't look right to you, by all means, say something. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because teachers make mistakes. Teachers are not perfect. So for some reason, I don't know whether, I can't think, usually when I do something like this, it means that last semester there was a holiday on Thursday. So I had you hand in your journals on Thursday, but I don't know how that would be. There's no holiday right around now. So, same thing we usually do for tonight's homework. I'm going to give you a handout, and you're going to do that. But then this doesn't happen until, as always, on Thursday. So if you would make this change somehow on your things, do the homework as usual, but then the journal is checked. It's going to be next Thursday, not Tuesday. Okay. Again, it's just what we usually do is this. Does that make sense? Don't ask me how I got it up there on Tuesday. Okay, so we'll have this one, which is what, journal topic 11. I didn't put the number on here. You guys' journal topic numbers are one off from the other class, so I'm...
Oh, that's wrong. 11? Oh, it's, yeah, 11.
Yeah, this is 11. So next week will be 12. That's what I'm looking at. Next week will be journal topic 12. So what you'll hand in on Thursday will be 12 topics. Right. Okay. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Yeah.
You said the total amount of journals is, there's 10, so there's 10 that we recently had, 10, 11, 12, and they're due next week, Thursday?
We started the journal the first week of class. So I'm just looking at this week number.
Okay.
Yeah, so by next week, you will have 12. This is this week, this is next week. This is 11, next week is 12. Yeah, so luckily you guys started the first week. The other class didn't start till the second week, so that always confuses me. Try to get everybody started on the first week so I don't get confused. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? And I'll tell you again, you know, obviously, if you turn your journal in and on Tuesday, I'll just give it back to you and say, finish on Thursday. So it's not a huge issue. You don't really have to do anything different from what I've been doing. Okay. And believe it or not, I opened the paper this morning, and it's like the newspaper has been just, so this is today's newspaper. The newspaper has just been going along with what we're doing in our class. And here is the headline for today. Scientists locate 1888 shipwreck in San Francisco Bay. So this is evidently an old picture. It comes from the San Francisco Maritime National Historic Park. And that just means having to do with the ocean, okay? The iron and wood steamship called the City of Chester sank in 1888 after being struck by a larger ship in San Francisco Bay, okay? So 13 people were killed. So again, the newspaper is a really good thing to aspire to for you. I know that you guys probably don't see a paper newspaper, but if you go on the web and look at some of those news sites, they do the same thing. There's a headline, and you click on that, and then there's the rest of the story. okay? So it says, for a century and a quarter, the SS, that means stateship. That's the old-fashioned, back then they were called SS. City of Chester steamship lay forgotten at the bottom of San Francisco Bay. But, okay, so it's the same thing. The thing about newspapers is, unlike textbooks, because the newspapers were traditionally printed in these columns, they teach newspaper writers to keep their paragraphs really short. So newspaper paragraphs are going to be shorter than you find in a textbook. In a textbook, this would have been just part of this paragraph. It makes it easier to read because you're not having to look at this. You know, this is a little bit big for a newspaper paragraph. So different ways of doing it, but. And I think it's interesting, they kind of still do that on the web, even though there's no need to, because you don't have the little small columns, but that's an old-fashioned thing. So what's going on here that kind of relates to what we're doing is, says this isn't the Titanic, but we shouldn't focus our shipwreck history on only the big names, says this guy. Okay, every wreck has a story, and we've forgotten the stories of the people on this ship. Okay, so it gives the story of what happened, and then it was the second worst ocean disaster in San Francisco Bay. And then 2 years after it happened, so in 1890, a salvage crew tried to recover it, but turned back after a dead body floating in the ship's fatal gash, or the fatal hole, spooked the diver performing the recovery. So they never went back. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of interesting. So for decades, the location remained a mystery. Last May, however, this researcher was looking at another wreck, which they knew where it was, and she says they were doing this sonar. What does anyone know what that means? If you're thinking of looking for ships, if the ship is down here on the bottom and you're up here on another boat, do you know what sonar means?
It sends a signal,
Yeah.
and the signal bounces off.
Yeah, exactly. So they're sending this signal down, and they can kind of tell that when it gets to this boat, it's bouncing differently. You know, it's shorter than when it was over here. So they can map that there's a shape here with the sonar. So here's this is the picture of what they meant with the sonar. So that's like under the ocean. And they realized it was this boat. So it's kind of interesting the way they do that. Okay? So yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought, oh good, the paper is just doing our class for us, showing us how these have to do with what's going on in real life. Okay? So that's kind of an interesting one. Okay, so let's talk about the homework that I just handed back. This is, you'll notice that on this homework, you have a grade that's in, you can't really tell up here, but everybody's grade is in pencil. Or if it's not in pencil, I made a note to you. I started grading them in pen. So a couple of people at the beginning of the alphabet had a grade in pen. And then I thought, okay, you know, the same thing, like I keep saying, is happening with this topic sentence, this part of the class. People are still having trouble. So I don't want to just give everybody bad grades on the homework. And I don't want to just give everybody pink sheets. So we're going to move forward. I'm going to give you the next homework today, which is the same thing. But I figured since the next homework is the same thing, I'm not going to take time in class. But some people just didn't do these, which was fine, because I'm going to let you do them over again if you want. You don't have to go to the reading center. You can if you want. But I didn't put pink sheets on them. And if your grade is in pencil, that means you can turn it back in again. and no deadline if you want to do this, okay? So the problems people had were, and most people did a pretty good job of, you know, following along in class. Some of these, I do this every time. Yeah, so be sure that you are, here's the thing that we have to watch for. Okay, I just have to have this person's up here, but it's a good example. Okay, why is that so fuzzy? Oh, this is so annoying. What do I push down here to make it? Good, there you go. All right, so we said that this one was about audiences. Okay, and maybe audience is okay here if you get the participation down here. Remember this one about the audiences? But here's the problem that people are having with this part. Another check against itself that you have to make. This sentence has to answer the question, as you know, this sentence has to answer the question, what is it trying to tell me about audiences? So I might have looked for the word participation here, but because this sentence has participation in it, this is okay. All right. So my first question is this right? But this is here, so that's okay. Yes, Sandra.
The audience in the theater, that's what it's about, right?
What?
It's about the audience in the theater?
That would also be right. Or it could be audiences and participation. Or in this case, like I'm saying, just audiences work because they have participation here. Okay? Remember the bison? Bison would work if you had survival in the main idea. Audiences work if you have participation here. But is the rest of this right? Started out okay. Audiences participation in theater, so it filled that in. But here's the thing that I want to mention. This person got this right. This is correct. So first, and this is what a lot of people did. This isn't only this person. This is why I'm showing you because it's a good example of what a lot of people did. You have to check your work against itself. That's becoming more and more crucial as we get into these more complex things. This is what it's about. So this is what's mentioned most often. So that's good. Audience, theater goers, audience, that works. What is it telling me about audiences? Audiences participation. Okay, it's something about participation. But then the question between these two is this. Which sentence in the paragraph most closely matches what this says? You see what I'm saying about checking it against itself? So again, we go back to that idea of it's more important to understand what you're doing than it is to get the right answer. So this is right, okay? And remember this says, but, so this person did the right thing, picked out the sentence with the reversal transition, but participation in theater is at least 400 years old and dates back to the Japanese theater known as kabuki. How does that sentence, you see the problem? This is not what this sentence says. So if this person had checked, this is right. If you put audience, what is it telling us about audiences? She thinks it was this. But then you got to look back and say, okay, sentence 2 says that audience participation in theater is at least 400 years old. Is that what I'm saying here? See what I'm saying? So no. So then you got to go, oh, okay, this isn't right. I got to do something else here. Does that make sense? So in other words, your answers are all there. You just have to take that next step and check them against themselves. So this is okay, I'll buy this because this is here, but this is wrong, even though this is right. Everything has to match. Is that you, Diana, you look? No. Okay, so Diana, I think what you need to do is go back in and do this part. Ask yourself what's the sentence in the paragraph that's saying the closest to here. So then is there a sentence in that paragraph that says this? No, that isn't really in there, okay? It talks about when it was a new invention in the 16th century, it might have helped the directors. But I don't think that's really there. So if you just ask yourself these questions, you're gonna come closer to the answer. Does that make sense? So most people have some to do over. Some people didn't miss a whole lot, but those people can also turn it back in if they want for a good grade, okay, a better grade. Does that make sense? Again, I'm really emphasizing to all my classes, take advantage of the help that is offered. Go to the Reading Center, come to my office, the English Center can help too. Take advantage of the help that's offered. Because this isn't unusual. This is what usually happens at this point. We have to keep working on these. So I'm going to let you work some more on those and give you some more to do. Okay? We just keep practice makes perfect. Okay, so this is topic sentences 2. This is the second topic sentences homework. So my suggestion would be, if you are going to do that over, work on this one first. And you guys can also email me with questions. If you're at home working on, on Thursday afternoon or something and you're not on campus, email me. My email's on the green sheet, and ask me a question. You can do that too. Okay, so do this one and then try this one. Okay, these are, more and more kind of different arrangements of the paragraphs, different topics, but we're still looking for a same thing. Do we see a reversal transition? Okay. Is there anything that indicates a list? Okay. Write down the topic. What do you see repeated most often? Moon, and then you start to say moon, moon. What does this word mean?
Moon.
Lunar. That means moon. Okay. And then you see, oh, it's not just moon. What kind of moon is mentioned?
Oh.
Full moon. Okay. So go ahead and, write down, jot this down. If it's not right, you can come back and fix it, or if you want to add something to it. And then here's the thing about these steps, and the reason I continue to present them in these steps. Work through this, and if you can't find the answers, you may have to go back and start again. If you start in here and say, okay, this paragraph is about werewolves, all right, and you write down werewolves here, and then you say, what is it telling me about werewolves? And you look through here and you say, oh, I don't really see this. Then you got to go back. You say, maybe it's not about werewolves. Maybe it's about something else, okay? And the same thing here. If you've written down the main idea, werewolves only come out in the full moon, and then you try to find a sentence that relates that, you can't find it, maybe you need to go back to this, maybe you need to go back to this. So it's not necessarily just a boom, boom, boom thing. You may have to work on these a little bit to get them all to match, in a sense, to match, the ideas to match. Okay? So it's been linked to these events. All this stuff has been linked, but studies have never supported such claims. What are the questions? What studies? Okay, here's one study, okay? So we say, all right, is it gonna give us a list of studies? Kelly, Raton, and Culver. But down here, it's still talking about Kelly and his colleagues. So it looks like there's only one study going. It's not giving us a list of studies, it's only one. So that helps us. This is talking about one study. What did that study find? Does that make sense? If you ask your questions, approach it, you can tell what, you can kind of tell what's going on. And go back and forth. Pick one thing, and then if that doesn't work, go back and look for something else. Okay? Do some annotating. This is a complete sentence. That's another thing you check for. Check to make sure that's a complete sentence. And this is the sentence in the paragraph that comes the closest. Remember, it may not say like the monarch thing. It may not say exactly the same thing. It either comes the closest or it's the only sentence that isn't part of your list or the introduction or the conclusion. Okay, so check your ideas against it. Check your ideas against it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give that to you. And then, so you guys have plenty of work to do over the weekend without worrying about the journal. Yeah, I mean, you have to do it, but you don't have to turn it in on Tuesday.
What was that again? I'm sorry. What did, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have, I think you have plenty of work to do without that homework that I removed, without the journal homework. You can check that on Tuesday. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go on to our usual Thursday thing. And we're going to do a vocabulary quiz. And you'll be glad to know this is only one side. They're a little bit shorter, so there are still 10 questions, but it doesn't go to the back. But as you are figuring out, the words are getting, I don't want to say harder, but the words are getting a little bit more sophisticated, and the clues are getting, I think that maybe the words aren't getting so more sophisticated, but the clues are getting a little bit more sophisticated, like real life. It's not as easy to pick out some of these clues. And again, there are some that just have to do with prior knowledge. I think Lorraine Fleming tends to use more of the prior knowledge ones. Okay, and I typed this in here with my text, which you guys already know. Use context clues, not the dictionary. Or again, you know, prior knowledge can work both ways, as we talked about. You get a question like that one in the which one is it? In this one, where several people put, oh, it was in the Jackie Robinson one, where the word was forged, and several people put faked, which is one meaning of it, because you say, oh, I know what forged means, that means to fake something. But as it turned out, that's not the way it was used in the sentence. So your prior knowledge sometimes can work against you, so be sure you're checking. Like I would say, check that to make sure that the answer makes sense in the sentence. Okay, so the accident in the factory had left him maimed for life. What kind of clue do do you think that is?
Accident.
Yeah, it's, but is it, can we just put accident? It's not a restatement. Yes, not a restatement. There's no little story, which would help. There's no little story that says, you know, his left arm was cut off at the
Does maimed,
shoulder.
sorry, does maimed mean accident?
Nope, that's what we just said. Because here's what you have to do with the word accident. You have to replace it here and ask yourself, the accident in the factory had left him accident for life? That doesn't make any sense. So that's what you have to do. Louise?
Maimed means loss of limb.
It could mean that, yes, but, and that, I would accept that. Okay, did you have a prior knowledge of that word?
Yes.
Yes, okay. That's what this is. This is asking you for prior knowledge. And remember, there are two definitions of prior knowledge when it comes to vocabulary. One is that you just know what the word means already. But be careful, because forged doesn't necessarily always mean fake, okay? Check it, check your prior knowledge against the sentence. That would work, okay? The other prior knowledge, as Lorraine Fleming defines it, is your knowledge of the situation. What do we sometimes hear about when there are accidents in factories?
People losing fingers.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever heard of that happening in factories? Yeah. Something, you know, their hand gets drawn into the machine and something, yeah. So that's what it's, and not all of us have that prior knowledge. Diana is looking like, oh, I never heard this. Yeah, very often a factory accident can mean some kind of, what it means is, if you are, you know, if you just scrape your arm on something and then it heals up and it's okay. I mean, it may have been a bad scrape, but at least it doesn't look like anything. Maimed means, like Louise says, either you lose a limb, you lose a hand or a finger, or it's something that is disfiguring. Okay? It basically means something that can then be seen. You either have a really bad scar or you're missing a piece or something. So that's what maimed means. Sometimes you hear lately, there were these couple of stories about, what was it, somebody up at the zoo in San Francisco got attacked by a lion or something. And that, then they used that word, that he was maimed, meaning if he had lion scratches, that, you know, people can see that something's happened. So that's what this means. So it can mean, I would accept this, even though, again, that doesn't really necessarily fit in there. It left him with the loss of a limb. It could also be, now be careful of this. Some people write this word down. Be sure you get that spelled right, because I've marked that wrong a couple of times. How do you pronounce this? Scarred. What people tend to write down when they want scarred is this. How do you pronounce this? That's scared. So, and you can see my problem. If somebody writes this down as the meaning, I mark it wrong, because I'm reading scared. And that is an interesting guess. You know what I'm saying? It could work there. So, but I mark it wrong. I say, no, that's not what it means. And people come back and say, yes, it's scarred. I say, oh, you're saying this. So be careful of spelling. That's a tricky one. If you write scarred, be sure to spell it right. Because scared could be, you know, that could also be, but it means disfigured. Okay? So that's the one that kind of, you know, you read that sentence and you think, doesn't give me any clue at all. So again, it's asking you for prior knowledge of factory accidents. Okay, so I think here's the other one. We might as well do this one. This is another This is another one where I think she thinks people have more prior knowledge than they do. This is tricky. Okay. This one. When Senator Edward M. Kennedy died, anyone know who he was in relationship to John Kennedy?
His brother.
The brother. He was the last of the Kennedy brothers to
Kennedy
survive. Yeah, okay, so he died when, about 5-6 years ago? It wasn't that long ago, maybe 10 years ago. It wasn't that, he lived, John Kennedy, we know, was assassinated. His brother Robert, remember, who was the Attorney General, was also assassinated. And Ted, he was called Ted, lived until he was 80 or something. He was a senator, so he was the last surviving brother. Yeah, it was his family that was kind of beset by tragedy throughout the years. They had one brother died in World War II, and then these other two were assassinated, and then John F. Kennedy Jr., do you remember hearing about him? JFK Jr.?
He died in a plane crash?
Yeah, he was considered like the world's most eligible bachelor. Again, like his dad, very handsome, lots of money, and he and his wife took off in a plane during a storm one night, and the plane went down. So it's like this family has been had all this trouble. So he was the one that died of a natural death. Okay. So when he died, well-wishers, what does that mean? Well-wishers.
Grievers.
Grievers, okay.
Oh.
People, again, we had grieve in the Rosa Parks, people who wish the family well, people who were there to show their grief, to show their support, okay. So these people came, they aren't members of the family, so they can't come in. They stood outside the Kennedy compound in Hyannisport holding candles. So from prior knowledge of what people do when someone famous dies.
They cry.
Yeah, so can you guess what do you know what the word compound means?
Compound in
Just
this
by
sense
itself.
means
It's like property.
Property, good, property. Is that what you were gonna say, Louise?
I was gonna say that living space.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're both exactly right. You're both exactly right. So if you have this prior knowledge of this huge, wealthy family, okay, so there's this big family, bunch of kids, and then they had kids, and there's still a bunch of them around, that's very famous, and has been in the news all these years, okay? And we know that when somebody famous dies, they tend to come and gather somewhere. So yeah, exactly. Where they live in Hyannisport, which is in Maine, they all live in an area probably as big as this campus, where all of the families have these different houses. But of course, it's gated. You can't just drive in there and drive up to their house. So these people can't get in, but they came and stood outside the gates. Okay. Again, I think she's kind of asking for a little bit of prior knowledge about what's going on with the Kennedy family and how people would react. Okay. Yeah, so property is a good one, that where they live, even just their houses, stood outside the Kennedy's houses. That would work. Okay. What about compound as a verb, though? What do you do when you say, well, if you do that, you're just compounding the error? Have you ever heard that word?
Piling. Compounding is piling.
Piling it up.
Piling.
Yeah.
Pile on top of pile.
Yeah, you're compounding the error. You're making it worse. You're putting more in there. So the connection is that if you compound something, you're putting more stuff on it. You're piling more stuff on it. And then a compound of houses is more than one house. So it's a bunch, the both meanings mean a bunch of things, more than one thing. A compound, if you compound, sometimes you hear about compounding prescriptions. Sometimes that will assign something for the cat, and I have to go to a special pharmacy to get it compounded. In other words, they don't have a drug to sell, they have to put two drugs together. So they compound the prescription.
But in that
Putting two things together.
in that instance, doesn't it mean combine?
Yeah, combine, yeah, exactly. It's the same meaning as combine. So combining, putting together, so putting all these houses together into this one living area. Exactly, okay? Okay, so those are the two that kind of seem to be asking you for possibly a little more prior knowledge than you had, but otherwise, I think you can get most of these. Okay, so remember that that I'm giving you more to do, as you know, I'm giving you more stuff to do. This is the same kind of thing we did last week. These are getting a little longer, although I will tell you that throughout the rest of the semester, they probably won't get any longer than this. Okay, but they're definitely longer than the ones you had at the beginning, remember, which were only this long, and then you have the questions down here. So, again, remember to check your work against itself. Check your answers to these questions against your annotation. Is what you write here what's mentioned most often? Okay, double check it. Then ask yourself, what is the author trying to tell me about this? And again, check it over. Now again, read this sentence carefully. Last time it asked you, is there a reversal transition? This is a different question. What is the key reversal transition? So just by reading the question, you know, okay, yeah, my answer can't be no to this, right? Because she's saying there is one. Where is it, and what sentence does it appear in? There are several reversals, just like we've seen. Some of these paragraphs have more than one, especially the longer ones. Look for the one that turns the paragraph around from what it is discussing at the very beginning. So just like our news story, this ship lay at the bottom of the ocean for 150 years, but now somebody has found it. So that would be the key reversal transition. There's some more in that story, okay? And then, and you notice I'm asking you this after this, because as we've seen, very often the sentence with the reversal transition is the topic sentence. So, but don't just assume that. Double check it. Double check it. Try this one first. If you've discovered this one, see if that's right. And check this. So here's the topic sentence. Check this by saying, once I write a number down here, is that sentence saying the same idea as this? Not in exact words. But if this sentence says something wildly different from this, then one of your answers is wrong. So part of this is not just answering these questions and then getting up and leaving, but double checking against itself, okay? And is there a phrase or words that indicate a list? I'll give you a hint. The thing that indicates the start of the list is a different type of thing from what we've been looking at. I think if you're paying attention to all of this, it should be pretty easy, because as we know, if you found this and this and this, chances are the introduction to the list is in this, right? there are 4 types of sleep disorders. So that 4 types of sleep disorders is both the topic sentence and the clue to the list. So check all those things. And then here's, again, I know that you guys have seen this every week this semester, but I'm adding some stuff here to try to help you. Important, check your summary against your answers to the questions on this page and against your annotation. So take a few minutes to do that, because if something is off, if it doesn't match, then you've got to go back and maybe go through those steps. Oh, maybe this isn't about werewolves. Maybe it's about the full moon. Okay, so go back and try some other things. Okay, check it against itself. You might even find, as you're writing your summary, you might even find that if I've been grading you off for not getting stuff here, you might even find that you add stuff to your annotation, which is not ideal, but at least you're showing, oh yeah, now I see what it is. If you try to work through all these things, oh, now I see this, go back and do something else. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to give you the vocabulary clues, and then the same thing, come up and get this. If you need help with something, raise your hand. I will help you if you get my attention. I do have to grade the other classes' papers. So I'm going to sit up here and grade their papers, but wash your hands. And so I'm thinking in terms of 10 minutes to do this, and 10 minutes to take a break sometime in there, and then the second hour of the class to work on